Oh man. All right, I just got back from OpenAI Dev Day. See my little pass here. Um, my mind is just completely melted. I mean, they launched what I thought they were going to launch, but the way they launched it and just the overall experience of going to that event and seeing all the talks, it was the coolest. I mean, it might have even just been the coolest live thing that I've gotten to experience. It was amazing. So I'm just gonna really quickly go through the day. I got there at like 8:30. It was a really cool conference center that it was at. Kind of felt like, I don't know, it just felt like very chill, kind of where it was. Nice little banner, very almost like bare bones, like this the space didn't really have carpets or anything. You could see the structure of the building. Like, I mean, I'll show pictures as I'm saying this, but like just very interesting design to the place, and they definitely stepped their design team up, not just in the physical setting, but the product, which I'll get to. Was just mingling, got some breakfast, met with some super interesting folks who I would have never, connected with otherwise, and then started to sit down for the keynote about 20-30 minutes beforehand at like 9:30 because I really wanted to make sure that I got a good spot. So sat down and it started. Sam came out, which was just crazy to see him in person. And he started with this really touching video of how using ChatGPT has impacted people's lives. Was showing a mother of three kids, how she's using it to get parenting advice, showing an 100-year-old using ChatGPT and is super impressed by what it knows, is almost like its pal or its friend, just all these wide-ranging use cases, and how it hadn't even been released less than a year ago. It was a research release, research beta, whatever they called it.
ChatGPT as a low-key research preview. In March, we followed that up with the launch of GPT-4. And in the last few months, we launched voice and vision capabilities so that ChatGPT can now see, hear, and speak.
And now it's exploded, and they have 100 million weekly actives. I hope it's weekly, not monthly, but insane numbers. So then Sam goes into the meat and potatoes of the talk. And first he starts with GPT-4 Turbo. A couple things I can remember off the top of my mind about Turbo. 128K context window, which is huge, ginormous upgrade from their previous models. It's multimodal, so you can use DALL-E, you can use text-to-speech, and you can just use chat. That is ginormous. You can have an app where you can throw in an image, you can talk to it, all these things kind of chained together. The things that I really think were big are the assistant API, which basically is like powering agents.
I select some tools. I'll turn on Quick Interpreter and Retrieval and save. And that's it, our assistant is ready to go. Next, I can integrate with two new primitives of this assistant's API, threads and messages. The process here is very simple. For each new user, I will create a new thread. And as these users engage with their assistant, I will add their messages to the threads. I can simply run the assistant at any time to stream the responses back to the app. If I say, hey, let's go to Paris. All right, that's it. With just a few lines of code, users can now have a very specialized assistant right inside the app. And flight ticket. And behind the scene here, what's happening is that Retrieval is reading these files, and boom, the information on the screen left appears on the screen.
So different things like RAG, remembering the context or threading of a conversation, memory, a lot of this stuff is actually built in, or they will do it behind the scenes for you now. Function calling, so they are really just trying to cover that entire stack, so you don't have as much of a external setup for yourself. And the big thing that this all powers, obviously, are your personal GPTs and an app store of these GPTs. So you could actually type in a ChatGPT using natural language, and what you type will create parameters for your own bot. You could say, I want a bot to act this way or that way. I want it to have these questions. You could upload documents as almost like context for that bot. You could, with literally a click of a button, add web browsing, add code interpreter as a feature. And then to the right, you could literally see what it's going to look like, preview, etc., and download these just like an app in the Apple App Store. And I could 100% see it in my mind, this idea, not just of an app store, but of being able to do all these things in one place. One demo that really stood out to me is you use ZapGear and you can get content from your online life, and then you could take actions like add a to-do, send a note, etc.
That's my calendar for today. I've used this before, so it's actually already connected to my calendar. To start, I can ask, what's on my schedule for today? We build GPTs with security in mind. So before it performs any action or share data, it will ask for your permission. So right here, I'm gonna say allow. So GPT is designed to have taken your instructions, make a decision on which capability to call to perform that action, and then execute that for you. So you can see right here, it's already connected to my calendar. It pulls into my information, and then I've also prompted it to identify conflicts on my calendar.
That was really powerful to see. And so the entire end-to-end stack of function calling, returning content as JSON, everything they literally bundled into their own stack, and they killed so many wrappers by doing this, because all of that external setup where you would be calling their API, you would have very limited vector embeddings, you would be pulling external content. They've built it into the entire streamlined process. And that was just absolutely mind-blowing to see. It was also really cool that Satya Nadella came out, spoke about the Microsoft partnership, but that keynote alone, I was trying to keep up, posting like on Twitter during it, but I had a really hard time because every time Sam or one of the presenters said something, I was just like, okay, I knew they would do something similar, but this is absolutely insane. And then it moved on to different workshops. Don't honestly remember the names of all of them. I'm pretty sure there was one right afterwards which just spoke about how those features work, the UI wise in ChatGPT with these new GPTs, and then also the new APIs. And a lot of it was, again, what they were saying, but just the meat and potatoes of the actual routes, how it worked behind the scenes, what the developer experience would be like for this, etc. So if you didn't get to see it, I have entire Twitter threads, Farcaster threads. You can check it out, maybe here, maybe there. We will see, but you can check those out, and it has all of the information from the event that, I was just live casting basically. And then the other talks were about best practices for an LLM, fine tuning, like ops almost, like DevOps, but for an LLM, like how you can write unit tests for it and what the entire CI/CD flow is for an LLM. So that was just extremely interesting. I think a couple early thoughts are, one, as I said, so many wrappers, businesses just got destroyed, because if you were building a wrapper that, does what ChatGPT does plus one or two things, you could literally just type in those instructions. Nevertheless, you can add in external files, like all that stuff is fully built into their system, which is mind-blowing to me. I'm editing this video and I want to give some final thoughts on my final thoughts really quickly, because I've just had some time to think about it, and when I recorded last night I was still obviously just coming back from the event and everything. I think one thing is, when I say that every wrapper is going to be replaced, I don't necessarily mean right now. I think there's a couple things I can say to that. I think one is, there are certain wrappers or products built on top of GPT that have their own moats in terms of either like things that they do that GPT isn't doing well yet, or other things like data they can build on that are as important. For example, I don't necessarily think that the Bing browsing is amazing yet. It's just like not the most performant when I use it, etc. I also think that it's going to take time for people to use this API and for them to just continually adapt it. And there's obviously going to be people who want to build the open source alternatives. Like I saw Llama Index, Jerry from Llama Index, posting basically that you could do similar stuff to what is in the new Assistance API with Llama Index. I think the other thing as well is that, as I just said again, like it's going to take time for this product to get to the place where they fully demoed it today. Like for example, I went in yesterday, I tried to create my own GPT where you could go and you can like look up everything about myself and ask questions like, what's the last push I committed on GitHub? And it's just like taking some time, even if I'm trying to follow the way that they modeled it in the demo, it's just taking some time for me to actually get those accurate responses. And so I just don't think it's going to be as simple as, oh, tomorrow X or Y is going to happen. But I think the way that they presented it all in this image of a connected platform should have many people concerned. And I also think if you're a wrapper who is very weak, then a lot of it definitely could be recreated with what they released yesterday. I think another thing I'll say as well, and I was actually talking about this with someone, is the difference between this making people a programmer and the actual work being done. I forget who I was talking about this with, but it's basically saying, like for example, you add more lanes on a highway, makes people think the highway is going to be faster, so they come to the highway, and then it just makes it slower in turn. And that with programming, because you're using natural language to do things, people may think, oh, coding is the new English or the new language, whatever, and like we should learn it, everyone can be a programmer, but they may just get there and run into all of these pitfalls. And we still have a world where there are programmers, but there are also just these natural language like functions that aren't necessarily coding for everyone, but are just getting their task done. I also think that they're really pushing for everything to be under their stack. And I think at least for now, it does make sense for developers to keep up with the latest of what OpenAI is doing, just because I think what they're doing end to end in their stack is so much different and more powerful than what other folks are doing. And so yes, you don't want the vendor lock-in issues, everything like that, but it just seems like if you want to like stay competitive and also just build the best apps, that it can be very beneficial to use their entire stack. And now that everything with this assistance API is just a lot more embedded. And I also think I'm becoming a lot more convinced of using LLMs as a backend, especially now with this JSON mode where you can basically enforce a JSON response given a particular schema. And so if you do that and you use certain things, like now they let you actually pass in the seed number to a prompt essentially. And so when you do all of that, you can get extremely predictable results with the data that you've been parsing. And all of this extra, like taxonomy that you would need to do to get data is just being handled by the LLM. And beforehand, that also used to be more of a black box. You don't really know what's going on, but now with all of these additions, you know what's going on more so behind the scenes, and you can reliably request that data and use it in your app. And so that is something that is huge, because I'd always been a little bit on the fence of, yes, GPT like models are really powerful for doing this type of API work, but do you want to rely on it for all of it? After seeing today, I was like, okay, maybe this is something to really think about more. So those are a couple of the things that come to mind. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting some stuff, but I just cannot remember the last time that I walked away from an event or thing or just anything where I was that like mind melted and saw so much cool stuff. And I feel like I'm gonna look back at it and be like, it was really special to be at something that early. So that's kind of all my brain can compute to say right now, all the words that can come out of my mouth. But really appreciate everyone who's following along with this. And I just feel like it's an exciting time where we get to build the best world that we want to live in with all of these tools changing around us.